welcome to episode 29 of All the Horrible Things.
All the horrible things. Streaming catsup edition. We don't know what to call this one yet, but ultimately it's all those movies that we've caught and we can't really find individual categories for, even though I was shocked. Two of the movies we're talking about today take place at rest stops. Maybe we could have mustered up a couple more rest stop movies, but
I was going to say,
we're going to go through the streamers and talk about those that we missed. What were you going to say?
I was going to say those two would have been a really good like double feature, you know?
True.
Yeah, rest stop, public, whatever, creepy rest stops.
For sure. And I definitely liked one over the other considerably.
Okay,
but
yeah.
We'll get to that later. So yeah, we're talking Prime here. We're talking Shudder. We're talking Hulu. And then there's one title on Netflix, as well as one on Prime that we're going to discuss. Certainly the Netflix one is mainstream. You probably have all seen it.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Maybe we should start with that one then.
Let's
Why don't we start with the Netflix one that everyone's seen?
Yeah.
It was nice to see a vampire movie because it's been a while. We're talking, of course, about Jamie Foxx's Day Shift here.
Day Shift, right.
What'd you think? How'd you feel about it?
I was pleasantly surprised with this movie.
Me too.
I really loved the tone of it. I think it knew exactly what it was. It reminded me of some of those fun 80s vampire movies. But yeah, I guess, you know, what is interesting about it is like there wasn't a lot of hype going into it. You know, and Netflix, you don't necessarily commercials for. You don't see commercials for those.
True.
You go get like a trailer.
I didn't really hear about it until maybe 2 weeks prior.
Correct. Same here.
And I got to be honest with you. You know what sold it for me was Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a Jamie Foxx Snoop Dogg adventure throughout the whole beast. So when it started and I saw Dave Franco, I was like, uh-oh. But then I quite liked it. He had a really, really fun character in it. The things that happened to him, a beautiful character arc going on with Dave Franco's Seth in this, which is essentially we have this really cool premise of it's kind of like a Men in Black, but with vampires, right? You got this underground operation, the bureaucratic operation, where they essentially commission people to go and kill vampires.
You know, it has John Wick feelings to it because John Wick has the whole organization where you get paid in their own specific currency. It was very fun.
That's a good point. Yeah, we got a pretty awesome badass in Jamie Foxx's Bud Jablonski. I like that he's apparently got Polish heritage.
Yeah.
You're right.
You know what I loved about that, because that crossed my mind as well, is that this most likely meant that this wasn't necessarily written for him, but
that's true.
He stepped in and I thought he was fantastic. I really enjoyed the opening of this movie. I kind of wish we got more of him going from house to house as the pool guy. I could see that as a series, you know, that could have been a series, this pool cleaner in the valley.
Yeah, I like that. And to think this man is 55 years old. I remember we were watching this. I was like, how is it possible that he looks so young and he's 55, born in 1967? It was a shocker for me.
Yeah.
Because he looked the same age as Dave Franco, if you ask me.
Yeah, agreed.
He has a rich backstory to him between like essentially a little cliche and he's doing it for his family sort of thing, has to hunt down these vamps and get that dollar for his family. But I believed it because I felt like the family, the character, the wife and the daughter were well-rounded enough that, you know, I gave a shit. I cared a little bit.
Yeah. And you know, even the cliche moments about this, about, you know, I'm moving away with your daughter, that even worked for me. That really set the, vampire pun. It set the stakes. The stakes were high. The stakes were high. And I thought that totally worked. You know, I loved how it all unfolded and how it played out. I could see a sequel for this for sure.
There better be a sequel, like Night Shift or something, because ultimately he does then show that he has the chops to work at night. Even though I thought it was interesting that they really did a good job of blending like all the lores from all of my favorite vampire movies.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they did do that was new was they had this sunscreen that let the vampires go out there.
Yeah.
Which was really fun. But one of my favorite new things that they brought too was that age of a vampire's upon siring played a role in what happened to them. They really did some interesting stuff with that. I remember them talking about juvenile vampires who chew into another juvenile. They're more like zombie-like, like younger vampires who were born by younger vampires are really stupid and like half zombie, half vampire thing. I thought that was really interesting, just how the lineage affects what they become, sort of thing. And of course, we start off with our granny vampire, which was just such a fun fight.
Well, not only that, I really like how they tied it back to like the main reason, like the whole reason this vampire's after him is because he killed her grandma or daughter
her daughter.
Yes,
that's what's so beautiful about it. We have Carla Souza's Audrey, who's this like #1 real estate agent. Were they Sacramento? I can't remember exactly where they were.
I forget exactly. Definitely on the West Coast for sure. And I think that tied into Snoop really well.
But his means of killing vampires is really cool too. I'd never seen that. I guess it's piano wire or something, some sort of like really taut wire that he anticipates they're running into. We see that happen with, I'm assuming, the daughter's lover, or it wasn't her familiar because he was a vampire too. But they did bring in familiars into it. I just felt like, and even had a character named Jose. How often does that happen? Of course, Joss Whedon being our Buffy creator,
right.
Like that was a call out too. I just felt like it did really well with like mixing them all up and then still bringing us a new flavor.
Yes,
which isn't easy.
Some other like fun lore things. I liked how they could see how old a vampire was by the markings on its teeth. Thought that was
serrations on the teeth. Yeah, that was very cool.
I thought that was great.
Definitely enjoyed that.
I think there was a really fun throwaway, or I thought they were going to come back, are those two brothers, one of which played by my favorite action star, Scott Adkins, the two brothers who they all team up at the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was fun.
It was so much fun. And I also think that might be your spinoff,
Oh, the two brothers? What they were some sort of ethnic Eastern European brothers, right? And at first you think they're going to be rivals of not Jamie Kennedy. I don't think he could take down.
No, he could not.
But Jamie Foxx's character, Bud, seemed like he was going to be antagonistic with them, but then they teamed up and they all kicked ass together.
Yeah.
That being said, if they were going to be sticklers with one another and counted how many each of them took down vampires and got their commission based on that, the brothers really kind of beat Jamie's character.
They got screwed on that deal.
3, and they each got like 6.
But they were on his territory, so it was almost like a welcome, but I'm getting the bigger cut type of a thing.
Very true. And of course, Dave Franco's character, What's His Pants There, which is one of the funniest running gags throughout the entire
great running
movie.
gag.
Especially, if you're listening to this, you probably have seen this already, especially as a horror fan, being one of the top releases. He when he does turn into a vampire eventually, his big claim to fame then is that he didn't wet his pants. And one of the funniest lines is, "Well, vampires don't pee or poop."
Yeah. Hey, I didn't pee my pants.
Which is funny. I mean, that's something people always talk about. It's like, okay, they're ingesting this blood, but then is there any excrement? Or
I also really liked that neighbor character. I thought it was another throwaway, like it was almost leading up to a potential sub love plot, but in case the marriage didn't work out back to
that's right.
But she's also a vampire, but it had that fun, like, I don't know, that twist where she's still willing to kill.
Right. I mean, even Dave Franco's character is still like a good vampire. I like that ultimately they give these vampires free will, I guess, if you will. They don't automatically become villainous. Certainly their need for blood can overwhelm them at times, as we see Dave Franco does attack Jamie Foxx, but then he's able to like get over it, I guess. I like that. I like that we're going to have ultimately in the next one, assuming there is a next one, kind of more nuance. I mean, it is a little Buffy-esque again, because you got like the angel in this neighbor character who's helping, and there's also this romantic business going on. But I just thought it was overall a really solid vampire movie. I can't think of the last vamp flick that I've seen. What came before this? Vampirism has been such a dearth of vampire movies of late.
They have been making them. They have not been as large of or big. There was a really great I think it's called Red Sky, which is also on Netflix. It's a foreign film.
Plane, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it takes place on an airplane. And then there was also, I think it may have been a Blumhouse production that went straight to Prime, and I'm forgetting the name of that. But my point is they're there, but they're not being maybe marketed or I don't know. I think the vampire subgenre is on its way back as a return because we've exhausted everything else. We've got the new coming this fall Interview with the Vampire series for AMC.
Oh, that's right.
So yeah. I think, it kind of ebbs and flows with the vampires, because I will say Hollywood kind of destroyed it with the Twilights and the, not to knock True Blood, because I never watched it, but to put that whole romantic spin on it, it's sort of downplayed it or exhausted the audience.
I'm very surprised you didn't watch True Blood, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't.
Enough good that you can get past some of the melodramatic stuff. There's a lot of fun stuff going on. I mean, we're talking about Alan Ball here,
right?
Same guy who's 6 Feet Under, and American Beauty I liked before Kevin Spacey was the jerk face that he was. But he's a great storyteller and very good at characters. Yeah. And actually, one of the stars of it we're going to talk about.
I was just going to say that, and that's how I knew.
Rest Stop movies.
Yeah.
But we have an enthusiastic thumbs up on this one. We do got a lot more to get to, so let's keep moving forward. I think that's our only one on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh, about the vampire stuff though, there's one last thing I wanted to mention about how the Buffy reboot has been stalled. So I know all y'all out there are constantly.
Is that because nobody likes Joss Whedon anymore? Is that why?
Maybe they don't want to give him money. But interestingly, with all this inflation business going on and the gouging, it does make sense that vampirism in film is kind of making a comeback, because I've noticed sometimes the monsters that are put out there often have sort of a reflective nature, a mimetic deconstruction can take place. You can see how they're miming what's going on in the culture.
Absolutely.
And certainly with all this inflation and $6 gas, it makes sense that vampires then are going to be the analogy for the big wigs out there pricing things.
You're also going to see a big return with Marvel is going to be bringing vampires into the fold again. Not just Blade.
Oh, that's right.
Not just with the new Blade, but with the what was that werewolf series coming soon too? There's gonna be some vampires that are, they're really leaning into their horror again, which is cool.
Okay, it's not a Secret War. I don't know what Secret Wars is at all.
No, we'll see that down the line. We'll see that down the line.
Okay.
No,
right, interesting. And there's a big run. There was a big run about 5 or 6 years ago of X-Men versus the vampires, and like Jubilee becomes a vampire. And I think even now in the normal run of X-Men, she's still a vampire. So vampirism in Marvel has kind of stuck.
Yeah, I mean they have, I think, I don't know if they've got the complete straight out rights to it, but Dracula has appeared in Marvel.
Oh yeah, as he should. I love me some Draculas. Yeah. I love when people call vampires Draculas. That's one of the funniest things you can do.
It's like
Okay, let's talk about Amazon Prime. They had one offering, and this is one of the movies we talked about in our very first cast when we were, our second cast, the Sundance one, where we were talking about The Bling. Ultimately, this was shown at Sundance. It's mastered, has Regina Hall, and she ultimately becomes the first head of the chair, if you will, of the English department at a prestigious college.
That's what it is.
It is. Yes, exactly. This is a ghost movie that we're dealing with, kind of a Wiccan ghost movie, and it's really heavy in the race issues. I liked it a lot, but at the same time, I could see how people might find it a little boring because it is a slow burn. Regina Hall is great in it. There's also some like Rachel Dolezal comparisons, because there's one character who really kind of plays up her African-American heritage, and then it turns out her mom is super white. That's like one of the big reveals at the end. But ultimately, it's about one kid each year and is kind of pinpointed by this witch to be the victim, if you will. And of course, it is this African-American character, and the subtle racism that's going on throughout the whole movie by the white students to the black students is really a horror in itself. Because you haven't seen it, I'm not going to give away too much, but I would suggest it. But again, if you're not into kind of deeper, less overt horror, it's not going to be for you. It's not going to be for you at all. Because I'll put a full claimer, the girlfriend fell asleep during it. So that's that.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
one of those.
I would still like to check it out. I like all the stuff they're working with there, so I'll check that out.
Indeed, ghosts and Wiccan stuff. So
all right,
it was fun, but
potential,
a little snoozy.
Potential.
There's potential there. There's not going to be a sequel though. Unlike Day Shift, there will not be a sequel to this. Speaking of, let's just big up our boy Lamorne Morris, who interviewed Regina Hall this week.
He's the
guest host of Jimmy.
I know.
Jimmy Kimmel. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
We both have acted, and we went to College of DuPage with Mr. Morris back in the day. So we're rooting for him to do well, and he was pretty darn funny as Jimmy Kimmel.
Love it. Love hearing it. I think after that, we've both seen a lot of stuff that's on Shudder and Hulu. What would you like to talk about?
Yes. Well, we got less on Hulu. We got a bunch on Shudder. So let's hold off on the Shudder. We'll end with that because Shudder, I feel like, has been kicking some butt lately.
They sure have.
But Hulu is a close runner up. And another one of the ones that we talked about at the beginning of the year that I was the most excited about possibly is this, is it Norwegian? What's the, I think Finland? Norway. It's Norway.
Yes.
It's a Norwegian film called Hatching. And it involves this little girl who finds this egg after this bird flies into the home. And it's kind of a cliche moment where the bird kind of breaks everything. She goes and tries to throw out the bird after the mom really gruesomely just cracks it.
Snaps it good.
Zombie modes a little bit or something, and then gets out into the woods. Then she finds the small little egg by it, brings it home, nurtures it, warms it up in her little teddy bear, and grows and it grows and it grows. And then the creature that comes out of it is so much fun.
Yes. Starts off as a bird-like creature that I would say is, when we first see it, it's a mix of, in a weird way, it's a mix of kind of cute and hideous at the same.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting that we start with, because those baby birds are so freaking ugly.
Yes.
Right. I think they're just, and then they turn into something that's so beautiful, but they start hideous. That's kind of the opposite for like humans and most like mammals.
Right.
We start off super cute and then we become these monsters. But birds are the opposites. They start monstrous, and this giant bird creature that comes out of it to begin with, because the egg does get bigger and bigger, and it comes out, it's the size of her, right? Isn't it about as big as her?
Yeah, and I think what they try to
child.
Yeah, and I think they try to show you comparatively throughout when they're laying in bed and like cuddling together, like you might with a pet or a stuffed animal.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Because, well, she did have to tear into her bear, so it was her new animal. And ultimately, she's caring so much, even though this bird is hideous looking.
Yes.
Because the bird views her as her mother, and her own mother is really pretty terrible.
Yeah.
She's openly having an affair, and like the dad knows about it. There's like cuck situation going on. And she's really kind of emphasizing to her daughter that this is an okay thing, and you should be rooting for my happiness no matter what that means,
right?
Even if it means this disassembly of our family unit. So she's trying to be the mother to this hideous bird that her own mother is not for her.
Yeah, agreed. But at the same time, I mean, she doesn't have much to go off of, much to have learned from, you know? Her mom is also very controlling and forces our main character into gymnastics and to be like the best. And I mean, I think that's where the ugly comes from.
Yeah.
You know,
the mother is ugly in that sense. She's very, like you said, controlling and self-absorbed. Because
I was just going to say,
you get this allusion to her having been an ice skater when she was younger, and she has this big scar on her leg. So it's like one of those things where, because she had failed, now she's putting all her hopes into her daughter. Yeah,
a lot of pressure on her. And at the same time, I was going to say the mother is incredibly vain, and she's like a blogger, and it's
that's right.
I mean, what the film is really doing there is showing you how life is so different between what you put out there and what actually happens.
That's very
and
true.
It's really, what was really interesting at the start of this movie it starts off maybe in the first 5-10 minutes, they appear to be this perfect family because that's what the mom wants you to see. She's showing you all, you know, what she's putting out there into the world. And as soon as the bird comes and she snaps that neck, then we see who she really is.
You know who she really is.
Yes.
Exactly. Because she had it caught in the blanket. They could have easily re-released it into the wild. But she was so like deceptive about it too, because the girl, our young protagonist, caught it and the mother's like, huh, bring it over here. And you had no idea that she was going to snap it at first because she is such a hypocrite and she is blogging about the perfect Norwegian family, even though she's very obviously having an affair.
Yeah. You know,
it seems to hate the son. The son is such a strange
character. The son is clearly a product of like not enough attention, not enough hugs, not enough love, because there's even a moment where the mom comes back from her affair vacation and gets her daughter a brush and the son's like, what did you bring me? And she's like, oh, I didn't bring you anything. Just very, very blunt. Like, I didn't get you anything. Not like, oh, I'm sorry. You know,
apologetic. Oh, I forgot. It was just like, no, I didn't get you shit. Sorry.
And that little boy turns out to be terrible. And it's because, but here's what I wanted to say is that usually in a story like this, we would be rooting for the father. The father is so clueless. He doesn't know how to communicate with his children. There's that scene where the little girl comes in there. You almost feel like she wants to tell her dad, like, Mom's cheating on you. But he doesn't even know how to talk to his daughter. He's playing the guitar with his headphones on, and he's like, hey, did your mom tell you about her trip? And she's like, yeah. You're like, this guy's clueless. And then
okay, then. And he puts on his headphones and brushes her off.
For a brief moment, one of my favorite characters was this Tio, the guy who's the mother's having an affair with, because he is this man.
He's cool. He's awesome. You kind of understood why she would want to be with him over this milquetoast dad, because the dad did suck. Yes. And it almost kind of made you sympathetic of the mom. It's like, okay, this makes sense. This guy, is a widower. He's very sympathetic. He does have a baby, so it does make sense why he might be willing to overlook some of her own vainess, her foibles, for the sake of the baby having a mother figure in her life. He's probably the most likable character in the whole movie, despite him being adulterous. But it does seem to be kind of a different sort, not as taboo with their culture as we might take it here. You know?
I mean, this guy, Tio, they do the classic things. You're like, well, why would we like him? Well, he's a widower. You know, he hasn't done anything wrong. He's not cheating on anybody. He didn't leave his wife, or she didn't leave him. He taken from him. He has this baby, and you almost kind of feel bad for him. He's like, well, he probably could use some help with raising this child. Not to say he couldn't do it on his own, but I think that he's confused about who this woman is, the same way we were when we first saw her. But he's also like, do you have to film everything? Don't take photos of me. The last thing I'll say about this movie is it's really interesting, and I think what ultimately the message is, it's about how much of an impression you can be on your children. And if you look at the two kids, the little boy is almost a mini version of the father, and she is like, even Tio says, oh, like you are like
spitting image.
Yes. And like what we're going to get into this world is going to get are these little versions of you, and you need to be better. You need to be better. And I don't want to spoil the ending of this movie, because I didn't see that coming, you know.
Neither did I.
And I don't know how I feel about it, because it also has one of those. I'm trying to explain the ending without explaining the ending. Like it has like you're kind of like left to decide, you know, like.
Well, yeah, there's a little ambiguity there. You don't necessarily know whether it's a pseudo happy ending or still a really horrific ending.
Right.
Either way, it's a disturbing ending that taps into one of the grossest part of the whole movie. Is where it was hard for me to even watch when she's feeding this bird.
Oh God,
the bird will only eat after she's barfed it up, of course, because that's how birds are fed. But it's a little strange, because usually birds will put it right directly into the mouth to kind of like shove it into their baby birds' bellies.
Yeah.
Whereas she's just barfing it on the ground, and the bird's kind of like lapping it up. It was really gross.
Yeah.
But fun at the same time. I loved it. I think I liked it better than Day Shift of the three we've talked about so far, because it was just so unique and unlike anything I'd ever seen before.
Right. I will say
the aesthetic of it is so cool. All the pastels.
Yeah.
It really gave me a sense of what like Norwegian suburbia was in a way that I never.
Oh yeah. I was
imagined, really.
I was looking at, just even when you're looking in the home, throughout the home, everything is like covered in wallpaper, and you're like, oh, that's kind of like almost like Trapped in Time, like very popular in America in the 80s and 90s. But the doors are incredibly different from ours. They're like frosted doors, like something you would see like in an IKEA, you know, which is like, I don't know. It made me feel like, oh, you know, this world is different and similar to ours. And I don't know. I mean, I agree though.
Modern fairy tale written all over
yes,
it.
yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And even the song that they sung to the sun going to bed had such a fairy tale fable sort of. I mean, it was meta in that it was about a baby bird without parents.
Yeah.
I think it's an automatic classic. I'm just wondering if it will be remade in American style, because it's so hard for people to watch foreign horror.
Right. Well,
I mean, what is that one that's getting made into a TV series now? Let the Right One In, right?
Oh yeah.
The first movie is perfect.
It's perfect.
The remake is really, really good.
I know.
Reeves' remake is amazing, and I'm glad they made it. Did it need to be made? Questionable. But now they are making an entire, I think it's FX series.
I think you're right.
Of Let the Right One In.
Yeah.
But they're focusing specifically on, speaking of vampires, is the vampire tale.
There you go. See, there you go.
Focusing on the daughter and father scenario or dynamic versus the two kids.
Yeah. The love story, the weird, bizarre love story.
Right.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is about a bizarre love story. One last thing about hatching is like, what I had said, the children look just like the parents. Do you think that's the same reason the bird starts to look like her?
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Because the bird is kind of monitoring her family life the whole time. And that's why, I mean, the bird even has a weird relationship with her mother, where she goes in there and kind of like hugs her while she's asleep, leaves all the goo on her and stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, I think I really like your analysis of it, that this is ultimately about don't raise your children to be little copies of yourself,
right?
Because that's going to go wrong. That's going to go bad. They're going to eat the dog next door and maim the little girl.
Yeah, I mean, even Tio's like, do you even want to do gymnastics? And she's like, yes, it would be good for me. Check it out.
It's a great one. You got to see it. And I think it was a directorial debut for this.
I think you're right. And I hope they don't remake it, but we'll see.
Yeah, agreed. The other one on Hulu that we both have watched, and I actually watched this one last night, so it's fresh in my brain, is No Exit. This is our first of two rest stop movies.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. This is the one I like better, by the way.
Okay, that's what I knew you were going to say that, because I feel the same way. I stumbled upon this movie, and I am a sucker for single location, especially horror, single location films. This one, even with the tropes, it still works. You know, there's a snowstorm, the road's closed, you're not going to get cell service, but then there's a really great twist. You're like, what's gonna happen at this?
Two really great twists.
Yes.
I feel like.
Yes. No, you're right.
And it went the direction that because I immediately thought it was going to be the couple, and we have I can't remember his name. It's
Dennis Haspert
from 24.
Yeah,
he's so good.
Dennis Haspert.
Yes, Dennis Haspert, like the voice of Allstate.
Allstate,
he's got the
You're
best
in good
voice
hands.
in the world.
He does.
And at first you think, okay, it's a horror movie. We're going to get a twist. I definitely thought it was going to be him and his wife together, working together, that had kidnapped this kid. Because the premise is you got this rest stop that a handful of people are forced to because of a snowstorm. So you got like Shining vibes there too.
Yes.
And the girl who's run away to get to her mom, who's had an aneurysm, even though she has to break out of her rehab center to do it, she steals the car of her nurse.
She's a recovering addict.
So her essentially, what do you call that? Morality, whether or not we should like her is questionable, especially when her sister's saying, "Don't come. Nobody wants you here at the hospital." So she's not a great character, but I think that's what made her almost like actually likable because she was so flawed, but still trying to do the right
thing. Yes.
I like this character. Her name was Darby in the film. The actress name was Savannah Rose Liu. Had never seen any actor like this before. I felt like she brought a really fresh presence and just like style to it that worked for me a lot. And then of course you have the couple that's also stuck there, as mentioned by us earlier, Dennis Haysbert, and then the wife is a character actress that you would recognize.
Yeah, immediately.
I couldn't name one other thing she's in, but I know I've seen her about a bajillion things. Dale Dickey plays Sandy, his wife, who also turns out to be flawed herself. She's a former nurse who then becomes a housekeeper, and she does have connections then to the girl who has been kidnapped by the two gentlemen who are also not gentlemen, I guess, two jerks that also happen to be stuck in this what do you call it?
Rest stop.
The rest stop. It's a pretty fancy rest stop. That's why I hesitate there, because that thing is like, that's a deluxe rest stop if I've ever seen one, especially compared to the one we're going to talk about.
I know.
But it's a very fancy one, even though the girls' bathroom is still being
renovated,
done. And this is kind of the opportunity for our main character to kind of like get out, talk to the girl who's stuck in the van, and come back in. But without, I don't know if we should spoil this one too, because I feel a lot of people haven't seen it.
I don't think we should.
There's a double twist that I didn't see coming at first, just the way that it was set up. I mean, it really seems like it could have been a boring movie if they had stuck with who is established as this kidnapper to begin with. But what then compounds makes it that much a better movie. And like you said, it's only one location. For what they did with that one location, I was really impressed. The nail gun alone is worth watching this movie for.
Well, they
nail
did
guns all over the place.
They did such a good job of utilizing everything. I mean, I loved that the bathroom was being renovated and there was like a hole in the wall. I loved that it was incredibly snowy out there. I love horror movies that take place in the snow, which is something that you couldn't venture out into. It feels really claustrophobic, but you don't necessarily feel trapped as well. It's fun. It was a fun movie.
And I feel like in these single location movies, there's a really easy out in including fluff, but I feel like everything was so meticulously thought out. Gun stuff is so cliche, but the way that they handled the single gun that happens to be within this storyline, it really was effective for me. And other characters bluffing that they had one. It's just like gun stuff is so cliche these days, but this one pulled that off so well. And just the nail gun to the wall was another image I'd never seen before. It was kind of like Christ-like.
That stigmata
does get nail gunned right there where her hand meets her arm, and it's really effective. And in her drug use, how that then plays a part in her getting out of that, and she'd managed to not partake the entirety of the movie until she needed that to literally block the pain, so that she could then potentially save the day. It was really intense, and it went so fast. It was a normal length movie, but it just I was on the edge of my seat, I guess you could say, for the entirety of the movie, because I didn't know which way it was going to go, and I was interested in every single character, including the backstory of our baddies, and how ultimately they were telling the person that they were working for to kidnap this girl one thing, while the guy that they were actually working for was going to do something else with the kid. There was just a lot of intricacies. That I got to give it credit. It kind of really surprised me for the good.
You want to go to the other
Hulu offerings? Let's bust into Shudder. Which I've been enjoying a free trial of Shudder. I highly suggest you all check it out, because right now they really got some great offerings. Let me mention the one that you haven't seen.
Yeah, please do.
Off the bat here. Because it was one of those ones, it was late at night, I wasn't quite tired, and I wanted to toss something on to fall asleep to, but I wasn't able to fall asleep to because this movie was so unique. I'm talking about Phil Tippett's Mad God. This is the same stop motion animator that did Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach. Well, over the course of these last 30 years, this has been his passion project, and ultimately it's about Earth is hell, ultimately, and God continuing to punish earth. It starts with a Leviticus quote, which kind of turned me off at first, but then I saw what he was doing. The monstrous creatures that he has in stop motion, and our main character, the assassin, who also is kind of robotic, I guess, in nature, but he's got all these assassins who are going out there essentially to almost weather the horrors that he's put down there and perform certain duties, I guess. I really, really enjoyed it, but it was intense, and I don't know that your average viewer is going to take anything from it other than the beauty of it, I guess you could say, because it seems senseless, the majority of it. Like,
interesting.
I know he was going for something really, really deeper.
Yeah.
And it probably will take me another viewing to try and wrap my head around what exactly he was trying to say with this, but simply for the technical aspects and these creatures that he's created. And it even does splice in there's two actors in it, two real actors within this world of, and one of them I think is playing like the godlike creature who throws down this assassin into this world. But it's the world building that he does is so amazing, because he throws down these assassins and they just go through layer and layers of different hells, I guess you could say. It kept me awake when I could have easily fallen asleep, because I didn't know what I was going to be looking at next. And it wasn't, again, not one of those things where I was waiting to see what would happen in the plot next. I was just waiting to see the next technical feat, the next beautiful stop motion feature that he was going to lay out there. Definitely worth a view. But again, I might suggest having a drink or a smoke prior to it, so you might get more out of it, or extrapolate your own meaning from it. But
that makes sense.
It was like nothing else I'd ever seen, and the fact that it took 30 years to make in itself demands any true film nut to check it out.
That's commitment.
Man, God,
that is commitment. Man,
so let's talk about, while we're kind of like still on the cusp of talking No Exit, let's jump right to Glorious, which is our other rest stop movie.
Yeah.
Starring the dude from True Blood. What's his name?
Ryan something? Or
Ryan Kwandy?
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That sounds right.
Glorious. So this is their newest offering. It's the one that is featured on their front page. And the Glorious refers to two different things. Do you want to explain that to the audience?
Not really. No. Glorious. I think initially, what you are it's just tricky. What you're initially told or thought to believe is that Glorious is in reference to a glory hole at a rest stop. So our main character, who is, we meet clearly after a big moment in his life, whether it's, a breakup or whatever you're led to believe. And he is moving. Looks like he has everything that he owns in his car, and is stopped at a rest stop, and he goes into the bathroom, and I mean a lot happens that I'm not gonna
a lot that really turned me off from the movie at the top of the movie.
Yes,
because,
same here.
I really felt like his character in True Blood was well-tempered and well done. I felt like this character, it makes a little more sense knowing what you then know at the end, but it was so over the top because you're made to believe that he's getting over a girl, I guess.
Right.
He's heartbreak is what he's dealing with in one form or the other, and he has like these little tribal dances and screams and hoots and hollers around a little campfire that he makes, and he just drinks like half a bottle of Maker's Mark at the beginning. It just seemed a little too ridiculous and big for me.
For me it felt like
about him at all. Like I lost him immediately. Let's put it that way.
Well, for me it felt like we weren't going anywhere. It could sort of like the plot sort of just stopped. Like we were just waiting to see, what the rest was going to be unveiled to us. And the second part of Glorious is the meaning is that the person or entity, whatever you want to say in the stall next to him, is God.
Yes.
And a god, right. Sorry. Is a god, and voiced by the brilliant J.K. Simmons, who is basically everywhere right now, whether it's in a commercial.
He's what lends a little bit of credibility to this movie in a way I would have struggled to give it much, if I'm honest with you. And actually, this is like a god created by a god to destroy humanity. Because there's this really, I guess it's a Lovecraftian adaptation.
Yeah, yeah.
So ultimately, this god is kind of putting Ryan Quantine's character through this, I guess you could say, not really a trial,
well,
but
a test for sure. Test,
yeah, that
for
he
sure.
has to complete in order to save all of mankind. And whether or not this is all a hallucination or not is still in question, if you ask me.
That's a good point. I mean, we don't have many characters in this movie. We have a couple interactions. Some are flashbacks. One's another, or the property manager.
Right.
But the whole
Gary C.
Yes, right. Our main character is basically stuck in this rest stop. He cannot leave until he helps this god, and that's where the glory hole comes back into play, which I thought was funny. I thought
it was funny. There were moments of humor for sure.
Yeah.
And I like the painting of this god that's on the stall door.
Yeah,
and I like
that was very fun.
When our god is essentially telling him the story of how he was made and what he was supposed to do, it was kind of like told in sketches on the bathroom doors. There were aspects that I liked. It had some good ideas. I really struggled with the edits. I don't know if you had any issues with that too, but
I did.
Specifically when the god is kind of talking about something serious and then he suddenly needs to take a whiz or something. There's just this strange, really like hacky sort of way that they go back and forth.
Yeah, it's a tempo thing. Really
bothered me.
It's a tempo, like playing into, like, setting up a joke with music, which is really hard to do. Right.
Yes, exactly. I didn't mind the end. I like you said, there's a really funny moment right before the hyper climax.
Right. Right.
And I didn't mind when the god would send him off into these surrealistic, nightmarish sort of like revelations or realizations.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I just felt like it's your 2 out of 5, you know, or 1.5 to 2 out of 4 at most. I can't recommend it to people, I guess.
It's a really tough one not to only describe, but to, I mean, I think you kind of have to, on your own terms, decide if you're going into that rest stop.
Right. I think for True Blood fans, it'd be really fun to see Ryan Quantine again, because I haven't seen him anything since True Blood. And he looks a little different. He doesn't look like his young, sprightly self anymore.
No.
Which I thought was interesting because, you know, he's a Hollywood star and he definitely has let himself naturally become what he is. And I appreciated that, but it's really kind of such a contrast because he has such a like really soft voice. Do you notice this? He doesn't have a very commanding voice at all. And maybe that makes sense because he was subordinate to the god in it, but he's not your average like protagonist, I guess.
I agree.
I loved him in True Blood, so I gotta give him that. Let's move on, shall we?
We shall.
Throw out more of Shudder.
Tell me about
what else do we both watch?
Well, I was gonna say, why don't you tell me about what Josiah saw?
What Josiah saw was a delight.
Was
I highly suggest what Josiah saw.
That's great.
Here's the situation with this one. This is another one where I watched late at night and I got about 15 minutes in and I had to turn it off as it didn't captivate me like I needed it to in the first 15 minutes. But when I gave it a second shot, it turns out it's kind of partitioned into 4 parts. And the first part really does lay the ground for what is a great payoff in the 4th part. But ultimately you have 2 brothers and a sister who grew up on this farm with their really, really abusive dad and their mom who ended up having killed herself, probably because of the dad. And because you haven't seen it, I don't want to give too much away.
All right.
You think one thing happened to the mother and you think that the father is another thing, that it doesn't turn out to be true. But you have Nick Stahl, who's kind of the
love Nick Stahl.
Who got away from anyone. And, of course, anybody who's seen Carnival knows what Nick Stahl can do in his middle part of this film. Because it follows the first brother and the father in the first one, then it follows Nick Stahl's brother. I'm sorry, Nick Stahl as the second brother who ran away, and now he's in such a terrible situation that he has to try and steal gold from gypsies with like these two other bartenders who are kind of under the control of this like mafiosa sort of like. And he's not like Italian. He's just like, he's a guy who clearly owns a lot of strip clubs and has a lot of sway over people. And he's going to kill Nick Stahl unless he goes and gets this gold from the gypsies. But these gypsies who run the carnival, interestingly, another carnival, are really fun to watch. You got a fortune teller in there that's unforgettable. And what happens with him and the gypsies is the best part of the movie, hands down.
Yeah.
Then you move into the sister who, it's very clear that she had been abused in the family, and she struggles now with her husband, played by Tony Hale. So we have Tony Hale in this like ridiculously serious part that you would have never expected him, supporting his wife who's really bad at dinner parties and easily offended. But then ultimately the three come together when they're getting a letter from oil companies to sell the farm. So Nick Stahl and his sister have to go and convince the third brother to do it, even though the dad has a looming influence over the farm. And then it does have twists and turns that I got mixed feelings about because it's so much, I guess you could say, but it's unforgettable. I really did like it, and just seeing Robert Patrick in such a horrific role himself, being such an awful father. Granted, he's great as the Terminator 2 Liquid Terminator, but this is a very much more human villain that I thought he knocked out of the park. I think maybe next to Hatching of this catch-up streaming cast, I gotta recommend What Josiah Saw as my number 2.
I like that. I like to hear that.
That's another Shudder original, I think. Yeah.
It's not streaming anywhere else.
Which is cool to see Shudder's getting decent stars too. I love Tony Hale and I love Robert Patrick. So
yeah,
it had some star power. The other one I saw on Shudder right quick that you didn't see that I really liked, it's not getting the greatest reviews because the third act is trash, but the first 2 acts are really fun, really scary. It's about an imaginary friend.
Oh, I've seen it.
It's called Z. You have seen Z?
Yeah.
Just I know you said you saw one called Z for Zachariah.
No, but I have seen Z, and I think I saw it last Halloween. I mean, it's been around for a while, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, if this is not one of the ones that we're trying to catch up with in terms of this last year, we don't have to dwell on it. But if you like imaginary parasocial stuff, I feel like it did really well with the first 2/3. Do you remember what happens in the third act?
I don't. I remember not loving this movie.
No. Yeah. I mean, it turns out to be an imaginary demon or whatever that is attached to the mom that's trying to get to her through the kid. So until the mom acquiesces to say, okay, you can take me instead of my child. And then when he takes her, she then reverts to her childhood form as a mature woman. It just wasn't really great in the third act, but leading up to that, I thought it was really effective. I did enjoy it up till then.
Yeah, I definitely remember parts of this. And like, I think those parts were things I liked, but overall as a movie, I've never really been a huge fan of the evil kid, it's just,
okay.
I mean, we've talked about.
That's what was interesting. It's not an evil kid.
No, I know.
It is this nefarious force.
Yes.
But you're right. That's what it does seem like in the first 2 when you're not absolutely positive that there is the Z character there. And then finally, let's talk about a really interesting film that I have mixed feelings about too, but overall, I think I liked it. Bloody Hell.
Yeah.
What was your take on Bloody Hell?
Well, I had seen this one pop up on Shudder, and I like the poster. It kind of reminds you of when you were in a video store back in the day, and the poster jumped out at you. You're like, no, I'll give that a shot because I appreciate that. And I put it on, and I had no idea what this movie was going to be about. I thought it was incredibly interesting, and I did not expect it to be what it was. I liked how it played out and how it was structured, and I liked that we kind of jump back and figure out what happened on the day of this bank robbery, because there's a bank robbery.
Yeah.
I thought the lead actor carried this well.
He's really interesting. Who I compared to him? He's like a Rob McElhenney meets our dude from Evil Dead. the main character from that.
Like Bruce Campbell? You mean like
Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell meets Rob McElhenney, I felt like, because he had that same swagger as Bruce, but he looks a lot like Rob McElhenney. And some of the facial expressions, at times I felt like that's who it was. But you're right. I think it could have been so much worse if it was cast differently, because ultimately he does talk to himself. He has a physical, like, not a physical, but there's a visual manifestation of himself that he's talking to throughout a lot of the movie, and that itself is cliche. But I did think the whole backstory of him having been a anti-hero, I guess, if you will, a hero who ended up getting someone killed during a bank robbery,
a questionable hero.
8 years in jail, and then he just I like the way that he decided where to move to, just the spitballs on the map. Ends up in Finland. So our villainous family in Finland does speak in Finnish the entire time. So bear that in mind if you can't deal with reading anything. But I thought they were sufficiently creepy, especially like the two blonde twin boys.
Oh yeah.
Like the googly eyes, and the mom especially I felt was pretty scary, the way that they're kind of like just staring at him at the airport and stuff and creepily smiling at him, and the other dude overhears them saying, "We're gonna get him." And like, what does that mean? What do they mean, get me?
Right.
I thought it was well done for what it was, and there were times where I genuinely laughed, because this is, I would argue, a horror comedy.
I agree.
More than a horror.
It's interesting. I think they even call it out in the movie. I think the guy who says they're going to get you, he says, well, that's dark. And I think he even says, Americans, we call it black comedy. They even call out what this movie is.
Yes.
And I think the weirdest thing about this movie is that it's this weird blend of an American film and a Scandinavian film. Like,
that's a really good point.
I don't know many movies like this.
No, except for the part of him talking to himself, I felt like it was wholly unique. And granted, you got a cannibal family. You got the little guy who looks like Chunk, right? Who's the one that ultimately eats the meat. And then I guess the family gets on board and eats it too, or was the human meat just for Chunk?
There's the scene where the father even tries it, and I think he spits it out.
Said,
and
I think this is bad meat. I think they're on board, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, but the daughter isn't, and the daughter's ultimately the one that is helping him along the way, despite the fact that he does wake up without one of his legs, which it turns out to be really funny. I mean, for the majority of the movie, he's hanging roped up with just one leg. So for how entertaining it was, for how limited what they did cinematography wise was
not
great.
Even that. I was going to say, they found a really fun way, which again, you've already said it's cliche because it is, but they found a really fun way to make this movie, which takes place, a lot of it, a guy by himself talking to himself. They found that device to make it not seem as boring. They're like, well, he has someone to talk to, and this alter ego, or whatever you want to call him, is it's almost like a different character completely, right? It
absolutely is.
It's not like he's
kind of antagonistic, but also encouraging at the same time. He's the one that encourages him to shoot the guy in the dick, which ends up going well wrong. But you're right. Despite it being cliche, I think because of the actor who I'd never seen before, it worked because of him. It really did. It was new. He had like a new flavor to him in a weird way.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see him in more stuff, like especially within this genre. I think he could be kind of like a breakout star within this horror.
No, did you see that Bruce Campbell in him a little bit?
Yeah, but I also think there's the whole his leg being removed, and
Bruce lost his arm.
Yes. I think maybe that's your brain is also thinking that way. But no, not to take it away. I think he does have that that swagger. That Bruce Campbell swagger.
It was fun. I definitely want to suggest this one. But don't go in thinking you're getting like an amazing horror film. You're getting a fun movie with horror elements.
And not only that, it was just well made. I think it was
especially like the stuff that they go back to when like he's being followed by paparazzi and all the stuff like in the news about him. It just seemed legit, didn't seem hacky at all, and like his overall construction. Yeah, I'll give you that for sure. Yeah, and just I love the one flash of the family of cannibal Finns biking together, just like,
oh my God. Yes, that scene is how you do horror comedy. That is that is a horror comedy.
And of course, another flash to him dancing with his severed leg.
Oh my God.
It could have been so terrible, but it did get a chuckle out of me, so I'm not gonna fault it.
I did not watch this with Nora, and like Nora walked in right at that scene. She's like, "What are you watching?" And I was like, "I can't explain the plot now."
No,
but the golf club was a really funny addition.
Yeah, it was good.
It was, you know what, ridiculous but clever.
Agreed.
You know,
it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun, and but yeah, I like you said, I mean, I might put it on a list for like horror comedies for people to watch. But yeah,
absolutely. But in terms of the catch up, I would highly suggest Hatching and What Josiah Saw over all the rest. As much as I love Day Shift, again, I felt like there was a little retreads. It brought a lot of new stuff, but if you want to see something fresh, you go for one of those two.
Yes.
Hatching or What Josiah Saw.
All right.
I think that covers our cats up.
I think so. I mean, we managed to take a handful of movies and stretch it into an hour. So
yes, go team.
Go team.
And to our people out there, stay alive.